What is up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studio. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Famous. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you could have me. Oh yeah, I like to play for the people at your next event. You know, I like weddings and parties of all kinds. Video dance party karaoke jams have been what's going on lately. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, February 15th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, France reports first coronavirus death outside of Asia. An 80-year-old Chinese tourist infected with the coronavirus died Friday in France. French Health Minister Agnès Buzyn announced Saturday. The patient, who is not named, is believed to be the first to die from the virus outside of Asia and the fourth outside of mainland China. The man's daughter is also infected, but is expected to be discharged from the hospital soon. Meanwhile, the United States is planning to evacuate Americans from the cruise ship that has been quarantined for more than a week in Japan after at least 218 passengers tested positive for the virus. Overall, more than 66,000 people have been infected with and more than 1,000 have died from the virus across the globe, although the latest 24-hour period saw a dip in new cases. This is according to the New York Times and the Associated Press. Number 2, Barr assigns outside prosecutor to review Flynns case. Attorney General William Barr is having an outside prosecutor review the criminal case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The New York Times called it a, quote, highly unusual, end quote, move that could, quote, trigger more accusations of political interference by top Justice Department officials into the work of career prosecutors, end quote. Barr has reportedly been installing outside prosecutors to review numerous politically sensitive cases, including that of former Trump advisor who in 2017 pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. Since then, Flynn has been trying to change his plea to not guilty. Jeff Jensen of the Office of the United States Attorney in St. Louis is reportedly examining the Flynn case. This is according to the New York Times. Number 3, the DOJ. Andrew McCabe won't face criminal charges. The Justice Department said Friday that its investigation into former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who was fired in 2018 for allegedly lying to investigators about a disclosure to the media, has been dropped, and he will not face criminal charges. McCabe has alleged his firing was politically motivated in a lawsuit last year, claiming it was part of a, quote, plan and scheme to discredit and remove DOJ and FBI employees, end quote, who weren't, quote, politically loyal, end quote, to Trump. The Justice Department Inspector General concluded in a 2018 report, McCabe lacked candor under oath, and when questioned by investigators about authorizing a media leak, McCabe denied intentionally lying to investigators. President Trump has repeatedly blasted McCabe on Twitter, writing in 2018 after the release of the Inspector General's report, quote, he lied, end quote. This is according to CNN and the New York Times. Number 4, Border Patrol agents will be deployed to sanctuary cities. The Trump administration will deploy 100 tactical Border Patrol officers in 10 cities across the U.S. between February and May to assist immigration and customs enforcement officers. The New York Times reported Friday. The decision is part of the White House's battle against so-called sanctuary cities where local authorities often don't cooperate with Washington when it comes to handing over immigrants targeted for deportation. Border Patrol usually operates at the border, airports, and ports of entry, while ICE conducts arrests throughout the rest of the country. But the latter agency has argued sanctuary cities and immigration advocacy groups have made their jobs too difficult. Noreen Shah, a senior policy and advocacy counsel on immigrants' rights at the American Civil Liberties Union, said the deployment, quote, will put lives at risk by further militarizing our streets, end quote. This is according to the New York Times and NBC News. Number 5. Dozens killed in Malay attacks. At least 31 civilians and 9 soldiers were killed in a series of attacks in central Malay, the government said Friday, though they did not say who carried out the violence. One attack took place in a village where gunmen burned houses, crops, and livestock. Another took place in a military camp at the Gayo region, where one soldier was killed. The other 8 soldiers were reportedly killed in an ambush. Malay has been mired in turmoil for some time, with much of the violence stemming from inter-ethnic conflict in the center of the country. Human Rights Watch said more than 450 civilians were killed in the region in 2019. This is according to Al Jazeera and BBC. Number 6. 9 Democratic senators formally call for Barr's resignation. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat Massachusetts, on Friday formalized her call for the resignation of Attorney General William Barr, following up on her Wednesday insistence that Barr resign over his apparent interference in the criminal case against Roger Stone. Warren led 8 other Democratic senators in a formal letter calling for Barr's departure. Quote, we are writing to express our alarm about and opposition to the unethical political intervention, end quote, by Barr and the Justice Department in the case of President Trump's longtime advisor, Roger Stone. The senators, including federal 2020 candidate Senator Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, claim in their letter to Barr. Trump tweeted his opposition to the prison sentence federal prosecutors recommended for Stone. The DOJ stepped in to lighten the recommendation, though Barr insisted Trump's tweets had nothing to do with it. This is according to Senator Elizabeth Warren. Number 7. U.S. increases tariffs on European aircraft imports. The U.S. said Friday it will increase tariffs from 10% to 15% on European Union imported aircraft, which will take effect March 18th. The decision stems from a dispute over aircraft subsidies. The U.S. Trade Representative's office said Washington would still like to negotiate a settlement with Brussels, but it may depend on whether the EU imposes its own tariffs. Brussels said it would also like to negotiate, but will not be pressured into bending to Washington's will. Per Reuters, European plane maker Airbus said it was disappointed in the news and would try to, quote, mitigate effects, end quote, of the tariffs, quote, insofar as possible, end quote. The U.S., however, decided not to raise tariffs on a broader range of imports from the EU. This is according to Reuters and the Financial Times. Number 8, Bill DeBlasio will reportedly endorse Bernie Sanders. New York City Mayor Bill DeBlasio, once a 2020 Democrat contender himself, will reportedly endorse Senator Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, for the presidency, and will soon join him to campaign in Nevada. DeBlasio campaigned on a progressive presidential platform of his own for a few months last year until dropping out. When exactly DeBlasio plans to announce his endorsement is unclear, but he is reportedly expected to head to Nevada on Sunday to start campaigning around the country. This reported endorsement puts DeBlasio at odds with former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who is running a more centrist 2020 campaign than Sanders. This is according to Politico and the New York Times. Number 9, R. Kelly faces new sexual abuse allegation. R. Kelly was hit with a new allegation of sexual abuse Friday as a superseding indictment in Chicago alleged Kelly sexually abused one minor for 4 years beginning in 1997. Kelly was already facing charges in 4 jurisdictions for his alleged decades of sexual abuse and was charged in Chicago last year. This indictment appears to remove a person from the list of Kelly's victims as it adds a new one, and also seeks the forfeiture of assets from Kelly's production company and the company of his business manager and co-defendant. The disgraced R&B star's attorney tweeted Friday that, quote, "We continue to fight for him and look forward to the day he is free," end quote. Kelly's scheduled for April will now likely be delayed. This is according to the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times. Number 10, Bryant headlines finalist in epic NBA Hall of Fame class. The late Kobe Bryant, who was killed in a helicopter crash last month, joined fellow NBA stars Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett, as well as WNBA legend Tamika Catchings, as finalists for the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame on Friday. The 4 players are all but certain to be enshrined in Springfield officially after the Hall Honor Committee votes. Bryant, Duncan, and Garnett, contemporaries who enjoyed many on-court battles against each other, comprise one of the strongest classes ever. Hall of Fame chair Jerry Colangelo said between the 3 of them, they will have 11 championship and 4 MVP awards. Catchings was a 10-time WNBA All-Star and 4-time Olympic gold medalist. This is according to ESPN and the NBA. That's 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, February 15th, 2020. This has been What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube. Username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for